Do I have to do anything after this?
I think it's good. It's just you'll have to end it at the end, but we're good. So we are happening live now. So go ahead, Rosie, take it away. Start again from the top.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Facebook Live event. Sorry for that little delay. Today, our topic is managing family dynamics during COVID-19. As many of you know, with stay-at-home orders in place across much of the world and schools closed and many adults working from home, we kind of feel that families are in uncharted territory. And while many are happy to have this extra time to bond with family, for others, it may feel like relationships and even our patience are being tested like never before. We've also heard on many news media that there's an increase in domestic violence, and we thought it would be great to discuss these and maybe other issues relevant to family relationships, and hopefully at the end of the day, share some helpful coping strategies for you. To help us with this is Theo Selles, who is no stranger to the epilepsy community. He served as Director of Family Services and Community Development at Epilepsy Toronto for many years. He has over 25 years experience providing personal and relationship counseling. He also operates Integrity Works, a staff development and team building venture where he provides crisis intervention, mental health wellness workshops, and other employee services. Theo is also a pretty busy guy. He's a sessional professor at the University of Guelph, Humber, and Humber College, and is a regular on-air contributor to AM 900 CHML radio. So if you haven't listened to that, maybe you can check it out. Finally, Theo is an author, and one of his books, The Heart of the Pearl, is a guide to overcoming abuse. We are really happy that you have joined us today, and we will have a few questions that Theo and I will be working through before we open it up to those of you who are participating, and you can ask your questions. But we ask that you start posting your questions in the comment section, and we will try to get to as many of them as we can. We want you to note that this session will be recorded and will be on our Facebook page and YouTube channel right after, that you can watch it again or share it with your friends. So Theo, welcome to our Facebook Live, and thanks so much for taking the time to do this with us.
It's good to see you again, Rosie.
See you too, Theo.
And hello to all my proud purple people that I miss so much.
There you go. Now they'll get a chance to see you.
I got my purple shirt on, right? Rocking the purple shirt. I got my old Out of the Shadows bracelet on. I am ready to go.
There you go. Right, fit right in as if you never left us, Theo. So thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, to kick us off, I'm just going to start by maybe asking you to share what are some of the benefits, really, to families spending more time together as is happening with this current stay-home, shelter-in-place phenomenon, as you will? What are some of the benefits to this, if any?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think one of the things I wanted to say off the top is a lot of this has to do with there are many benefits to this. At the same time, I just wanted to recognize how scary this is for people. And I wanted to say to everyone who's watching that I hope that they're well and their families are safe and that they're going to take care of themselves and each other. So we're going to talk today. I'm going to talk a lot today about some of the benefits from this and how to deal with a crisis in a way that's positive, in a way that helps people grow. But just want to acknowledge that this is real, and that's part of it in a way, is that we need to recognize that this is an actual real threat, that we don't spend our times, gathering up conspiracy theories from the internet and talk about pandemics and all that, that we recognize that this is a real legitimate threat to ourselves, our loved ones. And that looking at it that way, taking it seriously, I think will help us realize that we really need to rally around each other, that we need to stand up for each other, we need to protect each other, and we need to be able to put ourselves, elevate ourselves, maybe give ourselves an opportunity to grow, develop as people. This is a test of who we are and what we're made of, and it's a test of our relationships. We're going to find out a lot about ourselves, and we're going to find out a lot about our relationships. This is a chance for us to be able to sit back and see areas that we can, benefit from the strengths that we have, but also areas that we need to really develop as people and strengthen our relationships. So it's a long way of getting around to your question, I suppose, but one of the benefits for families is really for us to reconnect. How often have we talked about how life is too busy, that we don't have time for each other, that, we're caught up in the rat race. And now here we are, we're actually forced to go together, spend time with each other. And we now have that time that we always said that we didn't have. And so we can look at that as being all about doom and gloom. And there, of course, there's legitimate scary things about finances and health that we need to worry about. But we can also look at this as, well, we've always said we don't have time for each other, that we are having too many distractions, that we're just chasing too many things and life is too fast. And so now what do we do as couples? What do we do as parents who now have more time to spend with our kids? What do we do with our relationships where we actually do have time to have those conversations that we never made time for before? What do we do as a family when we haven't spent time together as a group because everyone's off in their, off to work or school or concerts or clubs or, here we are together. How can we make a benefit of that where we get to know each other a little bit deeper, where we spend more time with each other, talk about things that we haven't talked about before, where we find out a little bit about ourselves, where maybe we dig out some board games and spend some actual physical time with each other and enjoy each other's company. We can do a lot with each other as families that we have neglected before.
So what I'm hearing you say, Theo, is that this is a great, opportunity for families to reconnect and get back to doing some of the things that we have been basically too busy to do, for sure. Because I'm certainly seeing that, even in my family, with family members scattered all over the place. It's just great time. I've been talking more to them because usually we're so busy with everything. So thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I was reading this fellow who was reviewing this book about the Great Depression, and the book was all based on conversations that the author had with people who were living through the Great Depression, and what was their life like? How did they cope? And again, a crisis that is affecting entire populations, that challenging to people's well-being, their health. Many people suffered, many people died. And in the midst of all of that, people talked about things like how they had taken things for granted before, and they were learning not to take each other for granted. They talked about how to make do with less and to appreciate what they had more. They talked about being able to spend that time with each other that they didn't have before because they were always away at work. And so again, here we are, we're faced with another very challenging circumstance, but it's not the COVID circumstance that should be determining how we are as people. We need to decide how we're going to respond to this, and whether we're going to rally against each other, rally around each other, whether we're going to love each other more, support each other more, learn to be more kind, learn to be more patient. Our patience is going to be tested. Our frustrations are going to come. Any anger issues that we have are going to surface. And we may have been able to avoid dealing with that for quite a long time. And so here we are. What is that saying? If you don't go to the mountain will come to you. Here we are. And so what are we going to do with that? Do we take our frustrations out on other people? Or do we learn that these are areas that we need to get better at? We need to become calmer. We need to become more thoughtful, connect with something deeper, do some reading, some searching, connect with helplines if we need help, get better at asking for help. There's real opportunities here for growth that I hope that we'll make use of.
Yeah, I completely agree, Theo. And one of the things that I've heard, someone say is the fact that, they haven't had family dinners together in a super long time. Right. And during this time, for the first time, they're able to have everybody sitting around the dinner table, which is usually where a lot of values are shared and stories told and people, connect with each other. So thanks so much for those great insights, Theo.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like in your neighborhood, but I'm seeing families walking together now. I never saw that before. There's entire families walking together now, because you can walk with each other, be socially distant, but you can still be with your own family. And so I'm seeing families go for walks that I'm pretty sure didn't happen before. So there's that, opportunity for us to slow down, spend that time with each other, maybe even connect a little bit with being outdoors, for crying out loud. It's nice to see people like just happy to get out of their houses, be with each other, walk with their dog, have conversations while they're walking. And those are like really great things to see.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I recently read a CDC article where Caroline Klassen, a marriage and family therapist in Winnipeg, she said something that I found really profound. She said, we cannot see the virus, we cannot yell at it. So the danger is that we're going to take it out on each other. I'm just wondering, like, what are your thoughts on that comment?
Yeah, and I think that's why part of why I started off by talking about we have to see this as being a real thing. And it's harder to see something be a real thing if it's invisible, but we have to take it seriously as if it was like a real person. Take this virus and make it many, many people, an army or something. Maybe we would take it more seriously, but for sure, we're much less likely to, feel like we were going to pull together if we don't see the enemy kind of thing, and if we don't see something tangible, we're very much more likely to not take it seriously. And then, of course, who do we take it out on? And that's a really important point, right? Freud was actually right. He said that people tend to displace things. If we're upset at something, but we can't deal with it, and we've done this a long time. If we have a horrible boss, right? We can't yell at the boss, so who are we gonna yell at, right? We feel powerless in one situation, and so we go home oftentimes. And sadly, we take that out on people that we ordinarily should be caring for, our loved ones. Because I guess maybe we think that, well, they can't leave us, or we're not going to get fired or something. And again, this is where I think we have an opportunity to grow. If we see these tendencies in ourselves, if we're frustrated with the virus and we wish we had more freedom and we're getting antsy and very irritable, well, this is an opportunity for us to understand that we need to get better at, emotional self-regulation, being able to calm ourselves, being able to deal with frustrations better, being able to accept that there's many things we don't have control over, and learn things like the Serenity Prayer or whatever it is that, people need in order to realize that it's okay sometimes to be vulnerable. It's okay to not have control. It's okay not to have power. Sometimes you just don't have power over it. You have to accept that you are vulnerable and that you are afraid and that you're frustrated, and be able to talk about that, be able to experience it, be able to share it, be able to support each other with it, as opposed to think that you have to do something with it to try to master it, take it out on someone to release yourself of those feelings through other people. So these are common things that we oftentimes have in our relationship, and this virus situation is bringing them to home for us. And here we are, we have to deal with this. So again, if that's us and we recognize us doing those things, that's an opportunity for us to step back, reflect, and go, well, do we really want to take it out on people that we rely on? These are the only people we've really got now. How can we go about supporting each other? What do I need to do to get better at being able to accept things that are out of my control, be able to get better at being able to calm myself down, relax myself, be able to express how I feel without threatening other people or taking it out on them. I think that's a great point that you brought up.
Absolutely. So pretty much we want to be conscious of our tendencies to displace, and so if we can own our feelings and express them and have them validated, and at the same time accept that this is a difficult time, so we can actually know what the target of our frustration is by owning that, hey, I feel anxious, or I'm upset, or I'm frustrated at what is happening, so that we don't, in a way, as Klassen said, yell at each other, because we can't yell at COVID, right?
Yeah, well, you know what, and I think about myself, I was terrible at this. One of the things that I grew up with was if something was wrong, someone had to be blamed. Like, you had to blame somebody. Someone was responsible, you had to get mad. And one of the toughest things I had to learn as a person was, it's not always someone's fault. And there's not necessarily someone to blame. And sometimes life is just hard, and that's just part of the deal. Taking it out on someone else is not going to fix the situation. It's not going to make your life easier. It's not going to make life easier. There's no need to react and lash out when you're feeling upset. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's okay to just be allowed, I'm upset. Being able to talk about it, I'm frustrated. I'm for me too. I'm getting a little stir crazy, Rosie, right? Like I am. But that's not anyone's fault. It's not the government's fault. It's not, my friend's fault. It's not my family's fault. It's not my dog's fault. And like, you know what? Actually, no one's at fault. Well, maybe who knows about terms of how viruses started, but that's a whole other thing. But the people who are around us, we need to get better at being able to love each other more. And this is an opportunity for us to be kinder and love and care for each other more. I was thinking about this in terms of people with epilepsy. In a way, I was thinking that they are, in many ways, more potentially capable of being able to handle situations of not having those times of control and all of that unpredictability. And, because of the seizures, the unpredictability of the seizures and other people's reactions that they've encountered, is that this is a time for my friends, my purple friends, to really pull on those resources, like what it's like to deal with unpredictability, uncertainty, and fear. You have those skills, you have those strengths. It's a time for you to really pull and use those, and because they're certainly transferable to the other situation that we're dealing with.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Theo. I agree with you on that for sure, because certainly epilepsy and when seizures happen bring a lot of uncertainty, and right now there is a lot of uncertainty about the future, and some people have lost their jobs, they're having financial hardship, some are afraid of getting the virus while already struggling with other health conditions. And so, interestingly, as we see when someone is diagnosed with epilepsy, that sometimes marital strife or relationship strife and conflict often thrive in situations of uncertainty. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on helping maybe someone who is listening, who they have the uncertainty of the seizures. On top of that, they are now faced with additional stressors. What are some strategies that you can share with those individuals who are, this is all now compounded by all the relational things that they're being stressed out by, seeing that, hey, now I'm not working, my partner also is not working. Are there any strategies that you can share with someone who just feel like it's all just adding up?
I think the fundamental place to start with is being honest and real. You are overwhelmed. You are anxious. You are scared. You're worried. It's a lot to deal with, and just be able to speak from that position, from a real place of honesty and vulnerability with each other. So this is what I'm going through, and how are you, and how are you dealing with it? What's going on with you? How are you feeling? And allow ourselves to really get better at listening with each other than we have maybe in the past. So many times when we're with each other, we only listen just long enough to be able to figure out where we're going to put our own perspective. We're listening just long enough to figure out when it's time for us to be able to say what we want to say. And I think when people are in a situation like this, when they're scared and vulnerable and overwhelmed, they oftentimes really need someone just to hear them, just to listen to them, just to, not judge them and not critique them and not even necessarily give them advice, but to be able to just express what's going on for them and how challenging it is and how overwhelming it can be for them. So if you're going through this, challenge yourself, if you can, to be more open about what's happening with you. Just be able to express that, and challenge yourself to really want to understand what your kids are going through and what your partner's going through, what your family's going through, your friends going through, and really get better at listening with each other without interrupting, without judgment. And then just be able to ask simple, basic questions like, you know, what can I do for you now? Like, how can I help you right now? Like, what do you need right now? What can I do to make it just a little bit different? So we get the sense that we're here for each other and we're sharing the load with each other, that we're, you know, we're fundamentally not alone in this. And I think a lot of problems in life, they can't be solved. You know, we can't necessarily fix them. But what's important for us is to not have a sense that we're alone in dealing with them, that we have someone who understands and is able to sit with us and gets us and is able to offer just a little bit of comfort, even a kind gesture, even a kind word, or even just being able to sit and hear you out. I think just starting off at the basics, that we oftentimes, because life is fast, because we're in, you know, instant communication, we've been texting with each other, all this, just sit down and really hear each other out and be able to understand where we're feeling and what it is, what little gestures can help, be able to help us feel a little more secure and a little less alone.
So I'm hearing you talk about just you know, the power of empathy, listening, not judging, and just the reality that we're not alone. You know, it sounds like, you know, those are really powerful, at least attitudes that we can take into this, even if we're faced with conflicts and disagreements over how this is going. So that's really good things to reflect on, for sure. I'm just wondering, Theo, so as we indicated earlier, there's a lot of parents who are, you know, working from home, and then the children are trying to do work from home as well in terms of school, etc. And I know that, you know, kids are not used to being stuck inside of a house, especially if they're living in an apartment, don't have a backyard, etc. Are there any suggestions that you can give to families who are just trying to navigate space, personal space, physical space, in terms of managing their own workload, and at the same time giving the attention to the children as they're trying to like do their schoolwork during this time? You know, how can families really navigate what I refer to as this minefield?
Yeah, well, when you call it a minefield, it already sounds pretty horrible, doesn't it?
Okay, I take that back.
I mean, you know, I think, again, this is an opportunity for us to grow and learn about things like space and boundaries and taking turns and taking time and respecting each other's company, respecting each other's needs and prioritizing. These are all really valuable life skills that we want our kids to learn. So our kids need to learn that when we're busy and we ask them to leave us alone and be busy doing something else, that they have to respect that. And we, of course, want to give our kids interesting things to do in order to keep them busy. I had sent you a link, the Khan Academy. It's like a great, many of you probably have heard of the Khan Academy as it's like an online learning forum. They have brilliant modules and videos, learning modules about just about any topic that you can think of. And there's actually a kids Khan Academy as well. So you can find resources online if you're looking for, my kids are away from school and I'm worried about them learning and doing things productive with their time. There are online resources that are really useful for your kids to make use of. The other thing about it, though, I think is we are going to have this more of a kind of a collective experience with our families around things like work and teaching our kids what work is about. So our kids, we don't have to take our kids to work one day to have them have a sense of what we do, because we are now at work and they're going to learn a little bit more from us about work and about work habits and about what we do for a living, which helps put food on the table and roof over our heads. So that's kind of an opportunity for our kids. I think we're also more of an opportunity to be more connected to our kids' education, because maybe some of us are guilty of sending our kids to school and hoping the teacher takes care of it. And if the report cards are good, then that's great. And if they're not so good, well, we'll have to have a conversation. We're going to be more connected with what our kids are learning and how they're learning than maybe we have before. We might get more involved in homeschooling than we would have thought before. But bear in mind, there are people who just homeschool all the time. So yeah, in a way, it can be, to use your word, a bit of a minefield, but there are real lessons to be learned about boundaries, about education, understanding what people do for a living, understanding how kids learn best, be able to learn with them, that we can maximize here.
Awesome. Thank you, Theo. So again, just trying to take advantage of this to be more involved, the kids being more involved in the parents' work and the parents being more involved in the school work. And maybe there's a lot of lessons to be learned from each other in terms of doing that. I heard someone mention to me in a conversation that one of the things that they're doing, because they obviously don't have a lot of space, and so they basically set up a schedule where her partner was like, okay, you take the kids out for a walk, for this hour, so I can have some me time and focus on some things I need to get done. And then we kind of shifted around just to give each other a little bit of breathing room. Or one person said, hey, I lock myself in the bathroom and just sit there and do a meditation just to get away from everybody for a minute. So yeah, I guess we have to get creative about how we distribute space and how we use the space that we have to be able to I guess have some sanity. Yeah.
Well, yeah, sure. And I also think it's a chance for us to really be able to understand a little bit more about what each other does, because it's an opportunity for us to look at different role responsibilities that we've had in the house. So if you have people who are discovering a little bit more about what it's like to do more of the work at home in terms of taking care of kids, raising kids, this is a real opportunity for people to get a sense of what it's like, that work is work. Whether you do it at home raising children or whether you do it in an office somewhere, work is work. And you talk about opportunities for us to gain empathy for each other and more of appreciation for each other. This is an opportunity for us to really have more of a sense as to how each of us contribute to the family and take on a little bit, practice doing a little bit more of what the other person otherwise does, and get us more of a sense as to what each person or people bring to that family to be able to help each other out. It's a great opportunity to actually go and look, well, this is really what your life is like. This is what you actually do. This is what you have to do. This is what it's like for you. And good Lord, you spend this much time with the kids. Like, how the hell do you do it, right? Well, this is how I do it. And this is what it'll be like if you do it more. And you get a chance to maybe be more of a parent in that situation than you have before. And so it challenges existing roles that we've had. Gives us more of an opportunity to have empathy for our partners and connect us a little bit more with our kids that maybe we haven't done before.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Theo. One other issue I wanted to bring up, and pretty soon we'll be opening the chat just to take some questions from those who are listening in. So we're pretty much wired for connection, and right now many are separated from those who typically provide them with the greatest supports. I'm just wondering, do you have a word for dating couples who because of like physical distancing can't be together physically at this time? Like, some of them are really stressed out about it. I've heard thoughts of, I haven't seen my partner in like 6 weeks or 8 weeks. What can you say to these individuals? Can relationships survive these kinds of separation?
Some will not survive during those times, and understandably so, and others will thrive. What's that expression? Distance makes the heart grow fonder. So we may come to appreciate each other a little bit more if we are not spending that time with each other. It'll be more amazing when we actually spend time with each other. We should get Mackenzie on here because she was sharing some of the tips before this talk, as I understand it. She's dealing with that. Look, if you Google, I did that just out of curiosity. I ended up Googling long distance relationships and how to deal with them. And Lord, there are like all kinds of really cool tips of neat, loving, romantic, sweet things that people can do to stay connected and have that bond with each other. So I think there's lots of opportunity for us to try those different things with each other, find ways of still staying connected. But again, people have been doing that for a long time. People go off to different schools, they move away for work, they have to go for to get transferred for a while, they still want to stay in touch. People have managed that before, being creative with each other, so I don't think it's the end of the world. And maybe for some of the relationships that break up, maybe it's for the best. Maybe that's okay too, that maybe it wasn't meant to be.
So again, there's positive and negative to every, to every challenge that comes up during this time. Before we move on to our next question, I just wanted to remind those who are viewing this to post any questions that you have on the chat.
Just the easy ones.
Easy ones for Theo. Yeah, just so we can take them at the end of this our conversation. We'll take a couple of the questions that you have. So just a reminder for you. So Theo, one of the other things that have been on the news a lot is the issue of domestic violence, and
Sure.
And that since COVID-19 and this lockdown, that there has been an increase. And so my question to you, I guess, is to, if an individual has a history of like partner abuse, is there any risk that they can relapse into this kind of behavior just because of the stress of COVID? And if someone watching or listening is kind of going through this situation, what are some of the signs that people can look for, or what are some strategies that they can use to kind of get help or manage what is going on in their household?
Well, I think you have posted some help lines and numbers for people to call, I believe. Is that correct? Or you will be?
I can ask Mackenzie to share them on the chat, just in case.
So I think there are those lines, and I think it's important for people to not hesitate to use them. When you say, is there an increased risk of domestic violence because people are spending more time with each other, that kind of seems like a no-brainer in a way, that people who are going to be spending more time confined with each other may have more of a risk of being frustrated with each other, and people who haven't learned to deal with their frustration, haven't learned to deal with their anger, haven't learned to deal with their control issues, might end up becoming more violent again. I'd also want to say that having done a lot of counseling for people who have been violent and who are needing to have anger management, again, it's an opportunity for them to prove themselves, to show that they are capable of being loving and caring and kind and not violent. So I don't want to necessarily say, well, look, we have people with these issues together, they're bound to end up being more violent, but you would imagine that there is that potential. And I think the thing about this always has been, in my experience, is to, if there are those beginning signs for people, and I'm going to say that if you've been through that, if you've been abused, if you've been assaulted, you don't need to have anyone tell you what those signs are. You're going to have a sense of that. You're going to have a sense of that sort of increased tension, that irritability, that little increases in control. You're going to have that sort of sense that you have to start walking on tiptoes. You're going to know what that's like. And so to be very open to earlier on looking for support, looking for help, having a safety plan, having a number that you would call, and to not feel inhibited from calling because of the usual issues around shame or fear, to be able to really make sure that you and your kids are safe if those things are starting to happen.
And I mean, like, I think I heard someone mention a couple of weeks ago that because they're at home with the source of their abuse, their abuser locked in the same place, etc., that they didn't feel free to like have a conversation about it on the phone. And certainly one of the things that we suggested was just like, hey, I'm going for a walk, right? And be able to call someone, just let someone know what's going on, or to call one of these helplines that are out there, because it's easy to kind of feel boxed in or stuck in your situation. So I think it's really important just to be creative about how you have these conversations, etc. Another thing that came up also was just the fear of, going to the hospital. you know, when there's like injury or whatever because of, you know, fear of contracting the virus, whatever, coming home to or being in a shelter at this particular time when there's a COVID outbreak. So, you know, all of that, you know, just navigating that for some women, some people are difficult.
Oh, and you know, I don't want to minimize that. And I think that people are doing that risk management sort of, what is more dangerous? What is the thing that I need to deal with? What's the lesser of the two evils in a way? My message to my clients and my message to anyone who's dealing with this is to not think that you have to figure that out on your own. You know, go through all those mechanisms yourself in terms of what's safe and what's not safe. You know, call up a 24-hour crisis line and present the situation with them, and they'll walk you through it, and they'll let you know what resources are available to you and what the next steps are. And if there is imminent danger, 911 is not a long number to call, and there are people who will help you navigate that. You can't figure out all the different possibilities and variables ahead of time. Your job is to keep yourself safe, but it's not only your job to keep yourself safe. Thankfully, we live in a society where collectively we're supposed to help each other be safe and to really make use of the services that we've paid taxes for to make sure that they're there. It's not just on ourselves to keep ourselves and our kids safe. It's also, there are networks, there are resources out there that people are very desirous of being able to help you with it. Don't hold back from using them, even if it's just to stick your foot in the water, tiptoe and see what it's like. Oftentimes people have that barrier between, you know, keeping things private and bringing someone into their personal business. Well, you know, abuse and assault shouldn't be personal business. That's a social business. That's a collective business. That's a community business. And it's not just up to you to make sure that you're safe. It's a community's responsibility to make sure that every member in the community is safe. And so it's important for you to reach out to that community and make use of the services that are there. There are people who are there to help you.
Awesome. Thanks, Theo. So I'm going to just open it up for some of the questions that we received. Some we got ahead of time and some on our chat. And I just, you know, throw that out to you, Theo, and for you to see how you can respond to that. So what would you say if you're a single mom with 2 kids and that mom don't have a lot of schooling herself? She's sharing that it's very hard for her to help her kids with their schoolwork. Any suggestions for her?
First of all, I say to you, I don't know how you do it because I probably couldn't do it as well as you're probably doing it. It must be really tough for her to be dealing with that. I think the issue, though, is not a particularly new one. I think a lot of us struggle with, for instance, me trying to teach my son math was a total and absolute disaster. He learned less from math from me trying to teach them than I was able to teach him. You know, the thing to do again is to rely very much on the resources that are available for you. So I told you about the Khan Academy in terms of tutorials, cool apps that kids can use to learn things. I mean, the learning that's available now in terms of the kind of like game-like learning that's available for kids, that's available online is really helpful. But the other thing to remember is that your school, the kids' school, has not stopped being the kids' school, in that the teachers are still supposed to be there providing lessons, providing support for your kids, right? So it's not like your kids are no longer in school and so their education has ended. Make sure you reach out to the teacher and ask for extra help to connect your teacher with your children to make sure that they have as much support as possible. I teach a lot, and I would have to say that the most important thing for teaching that I provide for my students is not necessarily knowledge of the subject, but the willingness and the curiosity to learn and ask questions and find out the answers to those questions. And I think a lot of times parents, when they think about whether or not they're adequate educators of their children, think that they have to know the things that the kids are learning. Somehow they're coming from a place of knowledge. And I teach at college and university, and I'm very open with my students that, yeah, I mean, I do think I might know some things, but what I really know is how to find out when I don't know. You know, how not to be afraid when I don't know, not to think less of myself when I don't know, not to be quiet and hope people don't discover when I don't know, but to become curious about that and find out how to get that information. And thankfully, we are living in a world where we can access information very, very easily. All it requires is curiosity and being able to sort out what seems to be reliable information or not. But don't feel like you need to know the information that your children are learning. The best way that people learn is to have them teach you. The best way people learn is to learn something with you. So don't think of it as that kids don't have knowledge and information. I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. How can I teach them? That's a perfect place to start off with. Neither of you know, so let's not know together. Let's ask a bunch of questions. Let's do some research. Let's start listening to the teacher. What kind of resources are out there? What kind of tutorials are out there? And learn them together. So you're growing and learning with your kids, and you're teaching kids a kind of a love of learning as opposed to a fear of learning that oftentimes people seem to have. People have a hard time oftentimes saying, I don't know, right? Like, it's okay not to know, but it's what you do when you don't know that matters. Do you get defensive? Do you get fearful? Do you retreat? Or do you allow yourself to say, I don't know, but let's find out. Let's come up with really cool questions and see what happens when we try to answer them.
Absolutely. That's great, Theo. Obviously, as you said, just not being afraid to ask. There's no shame in not knowing, but learning with. I think I was talking to a friend of mine actually, and she was saying that, like you and me, I probably couldn't do half of that work anyways. But what she said was that she was actually learning with, right? So as she was going through the schoolwork, she was also learning with her child, which helped a lot because she had no clue before. So there's a follow-up question from the same individual who asked the question. And she's asking, she's saying, hey, I hear you. I get upset though, because of that sense of helplessness. I can't help my kids. And then my son has some behavioral problems and he won't let me help him. So is there any tactics that, or maybe that she can employ? So here's her child, she wants to help, but her son won't let her.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big picture. I don't, you know, with all due respect, I don't know her. I don't know her son. I don't know what the behavioral issues are. I don't know what strategies she's been given already to be able to use with her son. There's so much of that I really don't know. I would say though that the response of children to refuse to learn, to not be interested in learning and try to refuse help isn't a particularly new one that she's dealing with. You know, she knows her kids better than I do. She knows what works for them, what doesn't work for them. She knows what hopefully interests them, trying to connect what she's trying to teach them to what interests them. You know, oftentimes it's, you know, some of the, you know, maybe being a little in terms of setting some structure about privileges that that are earned as opposed to given, that are only conditional on certain learning. I mean, there's all kinds of things to explore to that I simply don't know with her. But again, trust that her frustration and her son's frustration is not a new thing, and it's totally okay for her to be able to sit with her son and talk about the experience of hopelessness and what it's like to feel that way for her. Ask her son if he ever feels hopeless. Maybe he feels hopeless about not being able to understand the material. Maybe there's something that would work better for him. You know, there are no quick fixes. And I think anyone who would talk with this parent who's probably trying the best as she can and say, well, you should do these things and then things will be better. Everything comes out of the context of the relationship she has with them, with her son. So protect the relationship first, communicate as best as she can, be open with them as best as she can, and understand that there is no clear, this way will work for your child, and all of a sudden your child will be excited about learning and receiving the help that you get. You know, just don't give up on your children is one thing, right? Still love them, still offer them that you're there for them and support them. Even learning just a little bit is something, even if it's not all you were hoping for, but still a little bit matters, you know?
Absolutely. And I think you made a great point earlier, Theo, about just owning those feelings and not being able, not being afraid to say to your child, I get it. Like, I feel frustrated too. And I see that you feel frustrated, just so that he doesn't associate any kind of judgment or shame to his own frustrations. You know, and then, you know, again, you said that the school is still there, and sometimes reaching out to his teacher just to say, how did you navigate this before? Like, when he's at school, and maybe the school and the teacher themselves can provide this parent with some strategies as well that has worked in the classroom that can help her there. So I think, thank you. And she said thanks for that response as well.
I just wanted to add that to her, just to send her this message that I think is really important for parents to learn and to hear. Oftentimes parents think, well, I'm not getting the results for my children that I'm looking for in terms of behavior or academics, the typical things that we oftentimes look for from our kids. And we think, well, we must be doing something wrong. We must be being bad parents. We must be failing as parents. Maybe we're not good parents. And I want to just remind her that the best parents are not guaranteed the great results. You know, your child is still an independent being with an independent mind. And so one of the difficulties I see with parents is they try really reasonable things and loving things, approaches, and it doesn't work. And then they get mad and they start yelling, or they start threatening, and they start withholding love, and they start being really intimidating and cruel in a way, because they're trying to get results. So in a way, they're becoming, you know, they might even get some more results that way, but they're not being as good a parent. And so your experience of being a good parent shouldn't be based entirely on your children's results. You shouldn't give up on being a loving parent just because you don't get the results that you want. I don't know if it helps her to think of it this way. So when she's feeling very frustrated, but still loves her kid, and the kid knows that her child knows that she's still there for him, even though when she's hopeless and frustrated and she hasn't given up on him, she's being an awesome parent.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I had another question that was submitted earlier, and it said, my partner is working from home and we have 3 small children. I feel like all the housework, homeschooling, and seizure management for our daughter has fallen on me. I feel guilty asking my partner for help when he's working full-time at home, but I feel like the only time I get a break is when everyone is asleep. How would you suggest I manage this?
I'm kind of feeling like Dear Abby or something, you know, like. So this goes back, I think, to what we talked about before in terms of understanding what each of us does and what our roles are and what constitutes work. Her partner has a chance to, if she's open to it, I gather she said it was a he, I think. If he's open to it, to really understand the work that she does, just as she has an opportunity to understand the work he does. And so this is a chance for them to understand that neither work should take priority over the other, that each of these are legitimate work. The time you spend raising children, if you want to refer to work, that's work. That takes effort for sure. And the work that whatever he's doing at home that he used to do at home, that is also work. So how do you go about as a couple recognizing the equal value of both of your jobs and then scheduling in time so that each of you can have breaks from work? I'm sure that when he went to work, I'm hoping anyway, when he went outside of the home to work, he didn't work from the moment he came in until the moment he left. He probably took some breaks. So I imagine her partner understands the value of breaks, just as she needs to have breaks from her job. So the work takes different forms, but they are both jobs. They're both work. And so now how can the two of them as adults who have these work responsibilities and work schedules create a schedule that allows each of them to have time off so that he fills in for her and she fills in for him, so that their days aren't a competition between their two works, but they're more of like, this is all the work that has to happen in the home. It's all of equal value. It's all necessary. How do we go about divvying this up in a way that's fair? And we need to be flexible and not just base that on prior roles about who does what, because the situation has changed. So our roles and responsibilities need to be flexible as well. Just as our workspace, our work hours have changed, our roles and how we do things and who does these things has to be flexible as well.
Okay, so flexibility and I guess valuing each other and each other's roles, and not being so, I guess, strict about those lines of roles, since both of us are here, but just being able to share a little bit of my world and I share a little bit of your world, you know, just so that there's balance. Okay, so I had another question, and it said, my partner worked from home before COVID, but I always go to work. Now we are both home and I'm witnessing more of his seizures, and that I'm not used to. I didn't realize how badly it affected me until now. How can I be more supportive while not going crazy myself?
Right. You know, I think that is a really good point. It brings me back to my time working with Epilepsy Toronto and working with my clients who have seizures. You know, she brings up a number of points, but one of them is what it's like for her to have her partner's seizures be more real and more visible for herself. Maybe she's never really taken the time to ask herself that question. Maybe no one's actually asked her that question. What's it like for you to have these seizures? And oftentimes we don't allow ourselves to ask those questions because I think sometimes people feel guilty about asking those questions because after all, they're not having the seizure. So how could they talk about what it's like for them to have their partners have seizures? Because we don't, you know, they want to make their partners feel bad about having seizures. And so this is going back to how you and I know you believe these things too, that when you have epilepsy in a family, the family has epilepsy. And so everyone needs to understand what it's like for them. And it impacts everyone. It doesn't mean that it's a competition for who it impacts more. It doesn't mean that if I share my feelings about it, that means you should feel bad about your experience of having it. So I think this has probably brought this to her, possibly anyway, in a more real way that maybe these two as a couple haven't really addressed. Her experience of seizures, what does she need to have? And what's it like for him to now have these seizures more visible? How is he with seizures? How open is he with it? How much can he talk about it in terms of what he needs and what his experience is? What is that like for them to understand that they as a couple share this particular issue, as opposed to one of them having it and the other one offering just more of a support role? It is very clear that this couple has epilepsy, you know, like in terms of like, this is a relationship experience. And so this is where they need to be really open and honest with each other about what that is like. And you've experienced this as well in your work too, where oftentimes people who have seizures really struggle with this notion that that it's not just theirs to deal with, but it's the families. And they oftentimes struggle with the frustration of, on one hand, I want people to know about it, to understand what kind of medications I'm taking, what kind of seizures I have, kind of seizure first aid. So I want people to be able to know about that, but then I don't want them to be worried about me all that time, right? Like I don't want them always tiptoeing around me. So this couple has those issues that maybe before it wasn't quite as much in their face, and now there it is for them to have really heart-to-heart conversations with each other about.
Okay, thank you so much, Theo. I think we're fresh out of time. So we just want to take the time to thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. And of course, thanks to those who joined us and for those great questions that we had. We want to remind people that Epilepsy Toronto and other local epilepsy associations are there to help you with this. And if you do need to talk to someone about, other issues that you're facing in your family and your family relationships, just know that you can call our office or you can go on our website, send us an email. We'll be happy to respond and to support you as best as we can. So some questions that leave us with, what if we embrace this new but weird time together? What if this is an opportunity for us to develop new ways of just being together? What if it's a chance for us to start some new family rituals? I think, you know, if we look back at this time, maybe after 5 or 10 years, we can choose what our memory of this season will be. Will we remember it as a time that destroyed our families, or as a time that strengthened our relationships? It's just something for us to think about as we leave this this Facebook Live event. I really want to thank everyone for tuning in, and just remember that this will be available on our Facebook page and also on our YouTube channel that you can watch and share with your friends. And just to remind you that we have another Facebook Live event coming up on May 27th. Where we'll be discussing the vagus nerve stimulator. So please feel free to join us. Yeah, and if you have a topic that you want us to cover during this time, feel free to send us an email and let us know. We'll be happy to do it. So Theo, great being with you. Thanks for a great conversation. We appreciate you and all the work that you've done and still continues to do to better our community. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and please stay safe and stay well. Bye.